You're watching Life Report, pro-life talk, real-world answers. Life Report trains people to more effectively defend their pro-life beliefs while honestly examining the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. We're the show other pro-lifers may have warned you about. This is Life Report.
Welcome to Life Report. We've been sitting here for a while now, just hanging out, getting to know each other, and everyone's like, wait a minute, where's Liz and Andrew? And we have two guest co-hosts with us today. Steve has been on our show 3 times now before.
I think so.
But that was before we went video, so this is your first time on camera. But Steve Wagner works with Justice for All. He's one of my favorite people just in general. And Steve's the director of training. He's been on here, and so if you go into the website, you can look up Steve Wagner. You can hear the other great content that he has provided us on the show. For the first time ever,
that is true,
Rebecca Haschke. And I'm going to do this. This would be usually the point where I would say, Rebecca, tell me a little bit about yourself. And this is always a little bit awkward and weird. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about Rebecca Haschke.
Please be nice.
Well, Rebecca is one of our interns at Justice for All. And she hails from Nebraska, in a small farming town there. And how many people live in that town, Rebecca? Because you just told me that I've gotten this wrong many, many times.
Sorry. 2,000.
Is that more or less than you thought?
2,000. Well, I was shooting a little bit low.
You thought it was like 20 people.
Well, I had heard that it was 1,200, but they've either had amazing rapid growth in the town in the last year, or they always had 2,000 people.
We've always had 2,000 people.
In the end, the only relevant question is, does the word farm girl accurately represent you, or would you not know?
Nope. Maybe Steve would say close. I don't like to refer to myself as a farm girl because when it comes to tractors and that type of mechanics, I don't know anything. But I would consider myself a country girl. I'll say that.
All right.
And yeah, she may not be a farm girl in certain ways, but she has the common sense.
Yes.
Of the farming community or the Midwest, for sure.
That really helps.
Let me tell one quick story about Becca. In a training that we were doing at Focus on the Family, she came to me, and Becca's one of our mentors at Justice for All. We have a team of mentors who walk our volunteers through the seminar and then the outreach. And I think your listeners have heard about Justice for All before. From your experiences, but Becca came to me mid-seminar and she said, Steve, I'm way behind. I haven't even started the last section, and now we're into this section.
And for a mentor, this is very stressful because we're trying to keep everybody on track.
Panic moment.
This is not a good thing. All right, go ahead.
And she said, is that okay? And I said, Becca, you made exactly the right decision, because she had been answering questions of people in her group, and they just had so many questions that were getting in the way of them moving forward.
Right.
There were personal blocks for them that she just decided to ditch the seminar and help those people. And that's exactly why we have mentors. And it's exactly why Becca, it was great that Becca was there and had the wisdom to not follow the script. And I said to her, the training is here for the people, not the people aren't here to serve the training.
Yeah.
And so that's just one, I guess, illustration of Becca's wisdom, kind of practical wisdom that I think farmers sometimes have. So maybe you are a farm girl after all.
Maybe a little bit. I've been really impressed. I get to watch you sometimes on campus talking to people and both. So I've been really impressed with you, not only in the seminar. I think you're one of the best speakers that I've seen doing the Justice for All work. Oh, absolutely. And no, not to like we are welcome. No, that's just true. But just in campus, just being able to, or on campus, being able to watch you interact with people. We talk about trying to, and we on the show as well, pro-lifers not being weird. And you're one of the least weird pro-lifers that I've seen. You're just natural. You don't seem out of place. You just talk to people really well and effectively. And there's so many. I mean, there's probably so many stories that we could tell about Becca. Do you have like a favorite, real quick story on campus you want to tell us, or
one of my favorite from being on campus was a young man who was pro-choice when we had first started talking, and as the conversation continued, we walked through the biology of the unborn, and that came pretty easy. And then we talked through the personhood, and by the end of the conversation, just the biology took 45 minutes, but walking through the personhood, and he really grasped onto that. And it was probably after about an hour and a half, he looked at me and he was like, I don't know what to do. And I actually felt sorry for him because I could tell that his heart was really changed on the issue of abortion, but his heart was really broken, not necessarily just for the unborn, but the fact that he was, I don't know, there was that dissonance, that cognitive dissonance of, okay, wow, I don't live my life this way. This actually means I need to change. And he looked at me, and his next question that he asked me was, how am I supposed to vote? And because he goes, my beliefs are different in different issues. Yeah. And it was through that, my heart broke for him because he was really hurt that way. But then he turned around right at the end, and he looked at me, and he's like, can I give you a hug? Before he left. And it was a genuine hug. It wasn't like this awkward. It was not awkward at all. And it was one of those moments for me, kind of to be like, okay, I really did relate to this guy. He felt safe enough when he felt down, because I could tell he was still defeated when he walked away.
Anytime people will spend 90 minutes with you, that usually tells me you're probably not weird. He was really enjoying the conversation. It is really super fun when you get to have the long, 5-10-minute conversations are fine, but you don't really get that far usually. But when you get to hang out for someone for 90 minutes or more, that's my favorite thing.
Especially when they're willing to stand in the sun. They're willing to.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's like, weren't you going to go to class or whatever? They're like, nah, I'll skip it. Kind of, it's like, that's awesome. Anyway.
It's best when they're really enjoying the conversation, too. And it's not just about challenging their view so much that it's uncomfortable for everyone.
Yeah, you're just having a normal, natural conversation. You're having some give and take. We're finding common ground. We're listening to each other. Those are, whether you're talking about abortion or anything else, I just think those are kind of conversations that we want to be having. So instead of, a lot of times we would just do, let's just interview Becca and talk about Becca. We're not going to do that. Becca and Steve are just going to guest co-host for us this episode and the next. And I've actually had the topic for today's show in the queue for a while. We almost did it last episode, and then we ran out of time, like we often do. But there's a pro-choice blog that I follow called Abortion Gang, and it's a bunch of young pro-choice people that are pretty smart, and they do this blog, and we've mentioned them a few times. I've interacted with them a few times in the comment section under their blog. And it wasn't too long ago that one of their bloggers wrote an article that was basically the 5 things that would make me pro-life, which I was interested in. I haven't literally read every single thing on this blog, but I'm clicking on that entry because he, basically said, hey, here's, I'm pro-choice, but here are the 5 things. If all 5 of these things happen, not just 1 or 2, if all 5 happen, I would become pro-life. Before I tell you what those 5 things were in her article, let me just ask you, what should that list be? If you're pro-choice, what is it that, what should be the thing or things that would change your mind on the issue?
I'll start with that. I think there's different pro-choice arguments, so obviously it would depend on where her argument was really truly coming from. But I think one of the first questions is whether or not they're considering the unborn to actually be a human being. And that should be one of the questions. If they don't know, they need to find out and be like, if you can prove to me that the unborn is a human being, then okay, maybe I'll be willing to change my position.
And we're not just talking a biological member of the species, but a full-fledged member of the human community, valuable, they'll probably say person like you and you or I.
Yes, let's not separate the two.
I agree. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Anything else you can think of that maybe would
I'm
be
not
on
sure
that
I
list?
understand the question exactly.
Okay.
Is it what would actually lead someone to become pro-life?
What should lead someone to be pro-life?
What are the essentials to being pro-life?
What are for me, for example, also you could put on there that bodily rights, for the woman, this shouldn't trump the fetus's right to life would be one of those things that should, for a lot of people, if they're not even on the personhood track, but they're like, all right, fine, it's a person, but there's a bodily rights thing, that should be on the list. That if I could be proven to me that the unborn's a person, or that bodily rights aren't maybe as big of a deal as I think they are as far as the relationship between mom and baby, then I would become pro-life. That's the kind of thing I was interesting. Can you think of anything else?
Yeah, I can think of one thing.
Yeah.
I think that circumstances, most circumstances, aren't significant enough to justify the killing of a human. Would maybe be one. So since many pro-choice advocates would cite things like we don't want children to come into the world who are disadvantaged, or we don't want them to be abused, or things like that. I think many times what's behind that is the circumstances are the guiding light, if you will.
Right.
That's all that matters.
Right.
And I've talked to people where they've said, well, even if the unborn's human, it's just, I can't countenance this circumstance.
Right. I think those are all good. I think those things should all be on a list. Those weren't on her list. So here are the 5 things that were on this woman's list. All women would have to be able to prevent unwanted pregnancies. So 100% effective contraception, and she named access and knowledge of how to use it all being part of that. So that's number 1. Perfect contraception. Secondly, no woman becomes pregnant through a non-consensual sexual act.
No rape.
No. If they rape, no pregnancy.
Okay.
3, no women would die as a result of being denied an abortion, meaning they can't be killing themselves trying to self-terminate.
Wow.
If abortion became legal.
Okay.
4, a fetus could be proven to feel pain from conception.
Mm-hmm.
And 5, there was an alternative to pregnancy, like premature delivery or another life-sustaining option in early pregnancy, like maybe an artificial womb.
Now I'm wondering if each of those in this writer's mind is a sufficient condition, philosophers would say, or is any one of those enough, or do you have to have all 5 in order to be pro-life?
She says in here all 5 would have to happen, and then if all 5 happened, or all 5 were proven to me, she says not only would I become pro-life, I would have to become pro-life.
So in a philosopher's terminology, they would be necessary conditions.
These are necessary conditions.
Okay, all 5 of them.
All 5.
So if the fetus doesn't feel pain, but all 4 of the other things were in place, she would not become pro-life.
Based on what she writes in a relatively short blog article, I don't like trying to get into people's heads that I don't know. It's hard to. There may be much more to her, but she is pretty specific in this blog article that basically these are the 5 things. All 5 would have to happen.
Okay. Yeah, I love that charitable attitude that you have toward her. I think that's really helpful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Do you know, just from her blogging before too, like with what she's written, is she someone who, like she's saying she would change her mind if all of these things happened? Is she pretty open-minded to other critiques in the question of could there be more that needs to be added to the list and we're taking away?
I'm not familiar enough with her. It's kind of hard on this blog because most of the bloggers are using aliases, and so it's kind of hard to follow. I would say this is a generality, but on this particular blog, there's been less open-mindedness to pro-life things than some other pro-choice people that I know.
Okay.
So, what about this pain thing?
Yeah. So this became kind of the most okay. So let's just say, is there any possibility, Steve? You've done more research on fetal pain than I have. Mm-hmm. Is there any possibility that a one-day human embryo feels pain?
One day that we would know that the embryo feels pain would be a different question than it now feels pain and it didn't before.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, a one-day-old embryo, is it even remotely scientifically possible that a one-day-old embryo is just recently been conceived, is able to feel pain?
Well, we haven't talked much about this, I don't think. My answer might surprise you. I actually think it's possible that an embryo feels pain based in part on what pain is. Pain is not simply a neurological firing pattern in the brain.
Okay.
Or if you have a pinprick in your finger, there's this thing that happens from that point, and there's some nerves, and we can map that through the nervous system. But I don't think that's what pain is. Pain is a felt hurtfulness, and it's something that is really not capable of being described in physical language. So I think it is possible that an embryo at even 1 day old could feel pain, because pain is something that is felt in the soul, not in the physical body.